Argentina. It wasn't enough for Sergio Martinez to be good. His elusive nature also shaped his boxing. In an era ruled by raw power, the Argentinian built his legacy on intelligence and evasion. He was also a master of counterpunching and moved on the ring almost like he was dancing in every fight. Every time an opponent stepped in just a little too far, he would answer with surgical precision like a slap in slow motion before the explosion. The Argentinian style was born from a paradox. It's a passionate and volcanic country, yet its boxing school preaches patience, rhythm, and distance. Argentinian fighters are taught to wait and observe their opponents while letting them make the first mistake. As soon as a weakness appears, they are ready to unleash precise and powerful punches at the same time. Sergio Martinez brought this style to perfection. His low guard, flexible hips, and unpredictable angles confused even the best. Against Paul Williams in particular, he showed what the Argentinian school really was. In a rematch that became legendary, he dodged a jab with a slight twist of the torso, then countered with a left that sent Williams into darkness before he even touched the ground. It may have been just one punch, but above all, it was a lesson. This style is not only aesthetic, it is also cruel and can make any boxer in front lose confidence. An opponent can throw a perfect jab or unleash a powerful combination and end up hitting air before getting punished at the very moment they begin to doubt. It's a style based on slow humiliation, feeding off the uncertainty that settles in the opponent's gloves. The Argentinian school doesn't seek open war, but the silence that comes from a man who was beaten without ever understanding how. In the country's history, others followed the same path like Nicolino Loche, nicknamed El Intocable, who used to win fights while barely throwing punches. He would make his opponents miss again and again until he found a flaw to shut them down. Juan Koji, Carlos Monzon, Pascual Perez, they all understood that in a war of nerves, the one who stays still the longest is often the one who strikes last. Martinez modernized this approach and added a rare, almost theatrical elegance. He took risks for sure, but they were always calculated because he had perfect instinct. The Argentinian style doesn't shout, it aims to break the opponent's spirit by making them believe they've already lost, so that it becomes true. It's a style made for those who don't need to do too much to dominate. South Africa. Some boxers are remembered for their violence. Others, like Maruti Mthulane, are remembered for their purity. Boxing in Mandela's country suffers from no excess and even less from unnecessary noise. It relies on a calculated rhythm and discipline that, combined with precision, produce excellent results. The South African style is built on rigor and doesn't try to impress but to win slowly. Every punch is thought through and every movement has a purpose. There's a clear British influence here. It shows in the high guard and sharp jabs with a consistently protected midsection. But this is no mere copy, because here, a unique pulse and local musicality are added. It simply means that South African boxing integrates variations that give fights their own color. Maruti Mthulane embodies this school to perfection. A discreet yet feared world champion, he never sold knockouts. What he sold was the opponent's inefficiency. He absorbed attacks, broke his opponent's rhythm, and answered with short, clean combinations that hurt through repetition. With him, no punch was thrown for nothing. Everything was calculated to ensure victory by the end of the fight. In his fight against John Riel Casimero, he was the underdog. But through calmness, timing management, and precision, he suffocated his opponent without crushing him, but by relying on exhaustion, as if every round was a repetition of the same script. One fighter tries, gets countered, steps back, and tries again. And it goes on like this until he no longer believes in it. The South African style is made to last. It's not a flash in the pan. It doesn't aim to end a fight in one round, but to control it from the first to the last. It rests on impeccable technical foundations and constant awareness supported by an iron mind. Because boxing at this rhythm requires nerves of steel to keep trusting the jab and moving calmly. That's why South African fighters, though few on the world stage, are respected. They don't talk much, but when they step in the ring, you know they won't make mistakes. And if they do, they will have analyzed them before the round even ends. Maruti Mthulane may be one of the most underrated champions of this century, but those who faced him know exactly what he was worth. Germany. Some styles are charming, others command respect. Then there's the German school, which is methodical and well-structured. It revolves around boxing that doesn't try to seduce but to win without necessarily being dramatic or chaotic. In the 90s, Henry Maske became the archetype of this approach. International Boxing Federation light heavyweight world champion, he embodied the German ideal: impeccable right hand, stiff guard, and clean angular footwork. Nicknamed the Gentleman, he didn't make grand gestures or scream, and he was definitely not there to put on a show. Every one of his fights followed a very precise plan executed to perfection. Maske didn't knock people out, but erased them round after round until their will collapsed. Same goes for Axel Schultz, a technical heavyweight in a world of brutes. Against George Foreman, he lost a decision in a controversial outcome still debated today, but he showed what the German school does best: keep the distance, control the tempo, never overcomplicate. This style doesn't tolerate embellishment. It's built on solid foundations: a strict jab, short steps, constant coverage of the chin. The goal isn't to take initiative at any cost, but to wait for the right opening, and when it comes, hit clean and straight, with no unnecessary risk. This is high IQ boxing where every punch is measured and every movement justified. Critics sometimes say this boxing is boring, and that's true. It doesn't thrill crowds like a wild uppercut or a desperate hook, but it wins. And more importantly, it doesn't collapse. In tough moments, this style stands firm because it was built to last. In truth, the German school was born from a mix of Soviet tradition, amateur influence, and a sporting culture rooted in discipline. It doesn't produce unpredictable geniuses, but reliable technicians. Fighters who know exactly what they're worth and what they need to do. Henry Maske retired with only one loss to Virgil Hill, then came back 10 years later to beat him. It wasn't a dazzling moment, but a true demonstration that proved to everyone that order can triumph over chaos. Canada. The Canadian style is not made to last or even to be flawless. It doesn't aim to dominate every exchange, but to survive the fight and hit harder than the opponent. In fact, it's a style built on fire. Arturo Gatti proved it. He didn't just represent Canada, he did everything to embody it through pain. When he stepped into the ring, there was no strategy left, just a man with willpower and a heart stronger than chaos. He didn't dance, and he wasn't the type to back off. He stepped into the fight and let the punches rain down on him before striking back with blows almost twice as powerful as what he had absorbed. Gatti was never the most technical boxer and can't claim to have remained undefeated, but he was the one fans waited for in every fight because he put everything on the line, whether it was his health or his entire career. Against Mickey Ward, the 3 fights became legends. No clear winner and no shameful loser. Just 2 men who emptied everything they had. That was Canadian boxing. It comes from the gut and pride, and doesn't obsess over stats. That's why Canadian fighters have this ability to bounce back no matter what is happening during the fight. Gatti wasn't the only one, but he was without a doubt the purest. A fighter with a face always damaged, but eyes always determined, who took punches no man should ever absorb, and who kept moving forward instead of falling. And he did it again and again. It's a style that comes with a heavy cost and leaves many scars, but one that remains in the memory of fans. Even if they sometimes forget an undefeated world champion, fighters like Gatti can never be erased from their minds, even if they tried. Russia. Russian style never shouts and never gesticulates, but it is built on waiting and constant observation. It strikes at the exact moment an opening appears, even if it's minimal. It's a boxing style without mercy. Sergey Kovalev is the perfect illustration because he doesn't put on a show and doesn't provoke. He's there to do the job. His boxing doesn't include drama, but it was always precise. He came forward with a strong jab and a devastating right hand that could drop any opponent. Kovalev didn't aim to break his opponent with one blow, but dismantled them slowly. He imposed his rhythm and distance with authority. The danger didn't lie in his speed or explosiveness, but in his consistency and his ability to make even the toughest back down. Trained under the rigor of Soviet schools, he had a clear sense of the ring's geometry. He knew the exact distance to strike without being hit, and once he found it, he never gave it up. But behind that cold facade was instinct and a contained rage. He didn't fight to entertain, but to dominate. His knockouts were clean and brutal with no frills. Andre Ward had to dig deep to survive. Jean Pascal was broken. Bernard Hopkins, the master of survival, was knocked down. Russian boxing doesn't seek chaos. It seeks control. But once the target is locked, it strikes with chilling violence. Kovalev was that kind of predator who wasn't necessarily the fastest or most technical. He was simply a cold and relentless fighter, and those are the values that define what Russia does best in boxing. Kazakhstan. In Kazakhstan, boxing is more than a sport. It's a discipline taught like science with rigor and patience. It teaches that one must learn to punch accurately before punching hard. It insists on mastering the basics before chasing attention and glory. In this country marked forever by the Soviet school, every boxer is first trained in balance, footwork, and rhythm. In the end, when an athlete manages to combine this science of detail with a hunger for dominance, he becomes unstoppable. Gennady Golovkin is the perfect embodiment of this philosophy. As an amateur, he stood out through consistency, cold focus, and anticipation. As a professional, he became one of the most respected punchers of his generation. But it wasn't his raw power that impressed, it was his accuracy. Golovkin never hunted the knockout. He waited for the opening to come naturally, then struck at the right moment and in the right place with terrifying efficiency. His jab was more than a measuring tool. It was an offensive weapon on its own, capable of breaking the guard and unbalancing the opponent to set up what came next. He threw it with surgical timing, then followed with a sharp liver hook, and none of that compares to the moment he decided to accelerate with a straight right to the chin that turned off the lights. But behind this clinical style was a fierce mentality. Golovkin always moved forward and pressured his opponent relentlessly. He cut off the ring with positional intelligence rarely seen, and imposed a pace that forced the other to choose, run or fall. His legendary chin allowed him to stay calm. It wasn't arrogance, but certainty. The kind of certainty that only comes from someone who knows every move is calculated. Kazakh style was shaped by decades of Soviet tradition and has produced gifted boxers with incredible technique. Their style may often seem simple on the surface, but history has shown how effective it is. We saw it with Golovkin, but also with boxers like Janibek Alimkhanuli or Serhii Sapiev before him. Australia. Australia is not a land of evasion. Here, there is no stalling and no playing for time. You have to punch and keep the pressure high by constantly closing the distance in the ring. Australian fighters have always stepped into the ring with one clear goal: move forward. No matter what comes, they respond with their heart and their fists. And when they find their rhythm, stopping them becomes nearly impossible. In the 1980s, Jeff Fenech embodied this mentality better than anyone. IBF, WBC, and WBA belt holder, he didn't care about his opponent's style. He smothered them. Fenech never stepped back. He threw in flurries and had the habit of circling his opponents while delivering a volume of punches no other bantamweight dared to match. His stamina was his best weapon and his fighting spirit his signature. Wearing the opponent down was his mission. Today, that torch is carried by Tim Tszyu. Less aggressive in appearance than Fenech, he still embodies the same DNA. Tim doesn't talk much, but he knows how to observe and read the fight before moving forward, punch after punch. He's not a boxer of excess. He's much more about control. The Australian style relies on one simple idea: the opponent must always feel under threat. An Australian boxer never offers a break because he is constantly advancing, punching, and slowly breaking down his opponent until he cracks mentally, or at least physically. The knockout isn't always the goal, but often becomes the logical result of unbearable pressure. Even when they lose, Australians leave their mark. The audience knows it, and so do the judges. They are born fighters. The island continent produces fewer champions compared to boxing's major nations, but those who rise to the top do it through war. They may not be the most technical, but they know how to resist any kind of pressure. Their style is appreciated because it's human and because it shows rage, resilience, and refusal to bend. It doesn't rely on grace or luck, but on repeated effort. Ireland. Ireland has never been the nation of the strongest or most technical boxers, but in the ring, it has something that can't be taught. It's willpower and endurance, no matter what. The Irish style is based on a simple truth. No matter what you have in your arms, if your heart doesn't give up, you're still alive. Katie Taylor embodies this idea to perfection. Olympic champion and world champion across multiple divisions, she fights with an almost unreal intensity. From the first second, she sets a high pace and strings together combinations like others breathe. No pauses, and even less hesitation. Her feet never stop moving and her arms keep throwing endless punches. And even when she gets hit, she answers right away with calm and fire. Steve Collins in the 1990s represented the other face of this style. Less fluid and less fast, he faced the most talented boxers of his time and beat them with one weapon: his determination. He knew how to keep moving forward after taking hits and could turn fights into physical and brutal battles that wore his opponents down. The Irish style doesn't try to win quickly. It lasts longer. It doesn't rely on a single perfect punch, but on accumulation and attrition. It is built on courage and demands the Irish fighter to never back off and to push until the final limit. It's also a boxing style born in working-class clubs and tight rings. It was forged in poverty and conflict, and it shows in the ring. This style never cheats. It is raw and honest while keeping its intensity. It appeals because it reveals what many try to hide: the pain of effort and fatigue. Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is an island with fewer than 4 million inhabitants, but in the history of boxing, it carries the weight of a giant nation. Few countries have produced as many world champions per capita. Few styles are as recognizable. A Puerto Rican boxer is first and foremost a technician with a touch of aggression. He is a precise puncher capable of countering at the right moment and delivering his blows with frightening accuracy. Wilfredo Gomez is the perfect example of this style with his 32 consecutive knockout victories and his legendary left hook. He struck with fierce elegance and made sure every punch found its mark. What was surreal about him was that he always did it with perfect timing and the clear intent to finish. Felix Trinidad carried that torch into the 1990s. Tall and explosive, he seemed calm on the surface, but was ruthless as soon as he found an opening. His jab served to hide a devastating left hook. He was never the fastest nor the strongest, but he placed his punches with millimeter precision, and when he landed on his opponent's chin or liver, the fight shifted. Then Miguel Cotto continued the legacy with a more modern approach, but one that remained loyal to the fundamentals. He used a powerful jab to dictate the pace and melted bodies with his left hooks. He always kept an eye on the counter and never moved forward without a plan. He read his opponent, then wore him down before breaking him at the chosen moment. His calm demeanor, his discipline, and his precision made all the difference in the decisive rounds. The Puerto Rican style is also famous for its discreet but effective defense. Boxers from the island know how to move their upper body, use angles, and stay compact even in the middle of a storm. They do not settle for trading blow for blow. They build their attacks and break the opponent's rhythm with their pace. This style is the result of a deeply rooted boxing culture. Thousands of young athletes train in local gyms with particular attention to positioning, timing, and punch selection. It is not a style built to shine in a single round. It is a style that wins round after round, minute after minute. And when the knockout comes, it is clean and undeniable. Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan is today one of the most feared countries in amateur boxing, and its transition to the professional world has happened without any loss of quality. This success is no coincidence. It relies on a style also born from the Soviet tradition. But unlike other nations from the same bloc, Uzbekistan has added a modern dimension that blends aggression and explosiveness. Everything begins in the sports academies. The teaching there is standardized with no room for improvisation. First come the fundamentals: compact guard, clean footwork, a stiff jab, and a powerful straight right. Every move has a purpose, and every gesture is learned and repeated enough times before being integrated into a global strategy. This technical foundation is non-negotiable. The Uzbek school does not produce artists but instead builds winning machines. Murodjon Akhmadaliev embodies this style. World champion after only 8 professional fights, he never loses control. Always in balance, he moves forward behind a jab that sets up quick combinations, often to the body. He wears his opponents down with consistency and accuracy. He makes sure to avoid any excess movement, and even more so, any careless mistake. Israel Madrimov is more flamboyant, but still faithful to the basics. He moves more and constantly changes angles. By doing so, he breaks rhythm and lands clean shots. His counter uppercut is one of the most dangerous in his division, and he uses classical techniques only to bend them to his advantage without ever losing efficiency. Bakodir Jalolov, for his part, represents the heavyweight version of this style. An Olympic gold medalist, he combines natural power with tactical discipline. With a jab like a wall, he also relies on a right hand that is a guillotine and knows how to keep his distance to dictate the pace of the fight. What these three boxers have in common is a style based on methodical pressure. Uzbekistan does not produce wild brawlers. It produces structured demolishers who hurt with every shot and who pick their punches, placing them at exactly the right moment. The Soviet influence is still visible. Low stance, solid legs, minimal movement, but the new generation adds the desire to finish fights. Nigeria. Nigeria holds an increasingly prominent place on the global stage of combat sports. More than just a boxing nation, it is a true breeding ground of explosive athletes who impress with both their power and their unshakable mental strength. In the ring, the Nigerian nation has built a reputation for fighters with a raw and direct style, capable of enduring and delivering brutal battles. And if there is one thing to say, it is that their boxing style comes from Dambe, as they call it at home. Anthony Joshua, two-time heavyweight world champion, is the most emblematic example of this Nigerian school. Although many recognize him as British, he is of Nigerian descent on both sides. His imposing stature and phenomenal power perfectly embody this energetic style. Joshua does not simply overpower his opponents with strength. He also seeks to combine solid technique with the ability to absorb punches in order to deliver heavy blows in return. Alongside him, Ife Ajagba represents the new wave. With an extremely aggressive style and devastating power, Ajagba is a true bulldozer, and his opponents know they are facing a man who never backs down. His heavy hands and physical resistance allow him to impose a relentless pace, literally crushing most challengers who dare to face him. But that is not all. Nigeria also shines beyond the boxing ring. In the world of MMA, Israel Adesanya has become a true legend, born in Nigerian heritage, showing that fighting spirit and determination are at the heart of this combat culture. His meteoric rise in the UFC has increased, which runs through the veins of these fighters. Their approach is not always the most refined, often less technical than other schools, but it is fearsome in its effectiveness. They favor aggression, constant pressure, and the desire to overwhelm their opponent, even at the expense of tactical subtlety. This style also reflects their origins. Nigerian boxers have grown up in an environment where daily struggle for survival shapes character. Panama. Panama is a land of legendary boxing and a country whose name echoes through the history of the sweet science with force and respect. Its style is marked by an almost visceral aggression and an exceptional tenacity. This school is above all one of battle, the kind that never backs down and knows how to strike exactly where it hurts. At the heart of this culture, Roberto Duran embodies this fighting philosophy like no other. Nicknamed Manos de Piedra, he perfectly represented the ruthless approach that defines Panamanian boxing. Duran was not just a powerful puncher, he was a relentless executioner who attacked both the body and the mind of his opponents with unmatched ferocity. This approach is rooted in the very tradition of boxing in Panama. Fighters from the country have always valued combativeness in all its forms. For them, victory is never obtained without suffering or sacrifice. They know that a fight is a war where the only viable strategy is to wear down the opponent, to crush him mentally and physically without ever giving him room to breathe. Beyond Duran, other figures have carried on this tradition. Ismael Laguna, for example, though more technical, brought enough intensity into his fights. The Panamanian style remains a fine balance of finesse and brutality, where every shot is calculated but delivered with the force of a hammer. In the ring, this Panamanian school often results in bloody battles where resilience is pushed to the extreme. Boxers never count their efforts or their pain. They keep moving forward, always seeking to take control through force and will. This mentality shapes exceptional champions who leave an indelible mark on the history of the sport.